Alrighty, so hopefully we're all now extremely comfortable with how we view and how we map internal structure. Okay, so what we were looking at is, if I can get the paintbrush to work, there we go. We were looking at those very, very tiny movements in price, okay? And we were essentially defining the bullish movement in price action as whether or not the candle breaks the prior candle's high. As soon as one candle fails to break the prior candle's high, right, we start to mark that out as a pullback, right? We can mark that out as our high when the market is bullish, okay? When the internal structure, I should say, is bullish, right? And now we only know where the new internal low will be once price breaks that high. Let me zoom in so it's not super small on your screens. Okay, so in a bullish market, we mark out the internal high as soon as the next candle fails to break that prior candle's high, right? Now, we only know where the next internal high low is once price at least wicks that high, okay? We want to see price break that high. Then we look back and we look for the next, the most nearest low, and that becomes our new internal high low, okay? And as soon as we get the next candle failing to break the prior candle's high, what do? We can mark out the new internal range we are within. We don't have to do this on a live market, okay? I'm just so we understand what's going on. That becomes our new internal high low. This becomes our new internal high, right? Only once the candle fails to break the prior candle's high. But as price is pulling back, right? Even if price, say, does this, at this point, we do not know that that is the internal high low, right? In a bullish market, in an internal bullish structure, until this high is taken, because what can happen is price can come up, it can pull back a little bit, and then when it takes the internal high there, right, to form an internal higher high, then where it becomes our new internal high low, it's not here. With internal structure, we take the nearest one, okay? So this becomes our nearest internal higher low, okay? We would mark that out, right? And then we would wait for the next candle that fails to break the next candle's high, so then we get that pullback, okay? And then that is when we can mark out this being our next internal high, so on and so forth, okay? But obviously, I'm not gonna mark these out in the market. What I do is when price is coming into a really nice level that I like, right? I'm going over this and being repetitive, but I really want it to sink in. Okay, once price comes into a level that I like, I would then potentially wait for that change of character, and I would want to see the bullish internal structure shift bearish. I would look for that most recent internal high low to be broken. Okay, and now at this point we have our bearish change of character. Okay, so that's essentially our internal structure. Now in this lesson we're going to focus on swing structures. So remember, we're looking at those bigger movements in price action. So we're looking for those big swings, right? Where we get a big pullback. That's our higher high, right? We wait for price to break that swing high. So we call this a break of structure. Okay, a break of swing structure is only what we refer to as a boss. It has to be swing structure for it to be a boss. Okay, that's the way we define it. Only once we get that break of structure, right, we look back at the lowest point and this becomes our swing low. So obviously it can be a little bit more complex in live market where you have a movement up, you could have a bit of a pullback like this, right? So on and so forth. It can move around. And then finally, we get that break of structure. Okay, so once we get that break of structure to form a higher high, the question is, how do we know where our higher low is, right? If this was just internal structure and not swing structure, it would become this point, right? Because this is the nearest low. But with swing structure, we always take the lowest point that took out the high. So after the high was formed, where is the lowest point that broke it? So after this forms, right, you can look to the right of this orange line. Where is the lowest point after the high forms? That then goes on to break it. This is it. So that's kind of the easiest way you can define it. Another way someone in the community recently defined it, which I quite liked, was it's the lowest point between two highs, okay? So between this high and then this high, where's the lowest point? It's down here, right? That's how essentially we take swing structure. So that's the difference between internal, we take the nearest, so it would be this one. With swing, we take the lowest, okay? So when we were looking at internal structure in the previous lesson, the way in which we define that is 100% mechanical. So what you learned in the previous lesson, you can literally program that into an algorithm to define the way that works, to define your internal structure, and to literally point out to you when that change of character occurs. Okay, so with swing structure, as you'll see throughout this entire course, kind of my aim is always, as best I can, is to try and make my strategy as near to 100% mechanical, wherever I can, okay? So with swing structure, one of the ways in which hopefully you can see in which I've tried to do that, is when we get a break of structure here, we always pick the lowest point, okay? So that's a mechanical way of finding out where your higher low is in a bullish market, okay? Because only once this high here is broken, for swing structure, we need to see a candle closure above that high to form a high. Then we look back for the lowest point, right? After this high was formed, where is the lowest point that broke it? So from this point onwards, right? Where is the lowest point? It's here, right? And that becomes our new high low, okay? So that is 100% mechanical. We wait for the price to close above the high for a high. That is 100% mechanical, okay, in a bullish market. So we know where our higher low is, and we know we're now going to form a high up here. But how do we make it mechanical to know where that high is formed, okay? Because price could go up, it could pull back a little bit, it could go up, it could pull back a little bit, it could move back a little bit here. But is this the high? Is this our new swing high? Is this the new high? Because price could keep going, right, with these little pullbacks. And we never quite know when price action is printing like this, when can we mark out with certainty that the swing high has formed, right? That the swing run is over, the swing high has formed, and we're pulling back. Well, some of you may be saying, well, we wait for a change of character. Yes and no, that's not really correct. A change of character, all a change of character does is signal that the internal structure is shifting from bullish to bearish or bearish to bullish. Okay, so let's say this is our most recent internal low, right? That tiny little pullback there. If price was to come down here now and break that, so we get a bearish internal structure change, that would signify that potentially a swing pullback is starting. That's all it is. All a change of character is, remember, is internal structure shifting from bullish to bearish or bearish to bullish, right? But it just gives us a potential signal that we might be getting a pullback, or the pullback might be finished and we're going, okay? That's all it is. It's just a signal that the pullback is either finished or starting. But it does not on its own define that this is now going to be the new swing high. So when we see that bearish change of character, you can't straight away just mark out this is a swing high. Okay, so you're probably sitting there thinking, well, you know, what is the answer? How can we make this mechanical so that I can now mark this as my swing high? I now know that this is my current swing low, and now I can draw the swing range that we are currently within, right? Because this is what we want to do in the market. We always want to know what swing range we're within so we can draw these lines, and then we know what range we are working with, okay? Because that's where we're going to start to build trade ideas around this. So, right, I don't want to confuse you, but I really want to go into details so you know exactly how to do this, okay? So again, I'm going to go over this. When we break the current swing high, right, we get the break of structure to form a high. Straight away, the moment you see a candle, right, on the time frame you're looking at, close above this break of structure, we have now started to form a high. So the moment that candle closes there, you can then look back, right, and find the lowest point. And that becomes the new swing high low. Okay, so that is 100% mechanical. There's no discretion to this. The moment you get a candle closure above the break of structure line, above this high, you look back for the lowest point, right? After this high was formed, where's the lowest point that went on to break it? It's this point here, okay? So I'm going to mark a line here. I'm going to make this as clear as I possibly can, right? This becomes, whoops, make a solid line, right? I'm even going to put text on it just so they can really, really drill this home. Current swing low, okay? Put it at the bottom, put it to the right. All right, so this is our current swing low. So the moment price breaks and closes above this high, we look back for the lowest point, and straight away we can do, you know, put a nice little, we use a highlighter tool, right? This is something I do in the live market just to make it nice and clear where my swing points are. Boom, you can mark it straight away. That is your swing low. No ifs, buts, and maybes. Right? This is your swing low. Okay. Now, when price continues to move up, this can obviously continue moving up for a little while. Whoops. And you can get these tiny little pullbacks, right? And sometimes, you know, it's questionable because it can be a decent sized little bearish move, and you're thinking, well, is that a swing pullback? Is it not? Is it minor? You know, what do I call it? Eventually, we then get that bearish change of character, because remember, you should know from the previous video that is 100% mechanical, because we're defining it. Well, I don't want to go over it again, but you've seen it in the previous video how we define it, right? That's 100% mechanical. When we get the bearish change of character, all that does is signal potentially we're going to pull back. But at that point, that does not necessarily mean that we know with 100% certainty that this is going to be the new, this point here is going to be the new swing high, right? So I'm trying to get here to the answer. So how do we do it? Well, this is kind of, I want to give you a clear answer, but this is going to depend upon each trader, upon what pair you were looking at, what instrument you were trading, and what time frame you were on, okay? This is the way that I have made it mechanical. And basically you have to test it first and you have to come up with a minimum pip size. Okay, so try and simplify it. For me, on euro dollar, the main pair that I trade, the pair we're looking at now, obviously with the 4-hour chart, I have tested it so that I know personally at the moment on the 4-hour chart, I need to see this movement, this pullback. As soon as I see that price pulls back from the highest point to the lowest point, 40 pips, a minimum of 40 pips. All right, once that happens, let's imagine that this from here, from this high here to this point here, let's imagine that that is 40 pips. The moment price pulls back 40 pips, now I can mechanically, with certainty, circle this as my current swing high. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So the way I have the rule with the 4-hour chart, only on euro dollar, is that as soon as we have that break of structure here, right, I can obviously look back. There's no if, buts, or maybes. It's always the lowest point that went on to break the high. That's the high low. But I do not know where my actual current swing high is in a bullish market until price pulls back at least 40 pips. The moment I see price has pulled back 40 pips, now I mark on the swing high, okay? So let me change this to that, right? So now what you can do is you can draw the range you're in. So we're within this current range, okay? So you can see how the way I define a swing high in a bullish market, it doesn't really have anything to do with when we get the change of character. Okay, the change of character signals that we probably are about to have a pullback. That's going to be more than 40 pips and then I can mark out the swing high. But the bearish change of character does not, when that happens, it does not tell me that I've had the swing high. What tells me that I have the swing high is that price has pulled back at least 40 pips on euro dollar on the 4-hour chart. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So the way I came up with that rule is when I went on price action, I basically just marked out what does a significant pullback look to me with my naked eye. Okay, so I went and basically mapped out structure, just kind of using discretion, right? And I looked at all of the big swings in the market. You get a little swing like that, I'd kind of ignore it. Then we get a bit more of a significant pullback, and then we get a movement like that, right? A bit of a small swing, whatever. Then we get a bit of a deeper pullback, and so on and so forth. And then what I would do is I'd just go, okay, well for me, let me get the highlights tool. I would say that is a swing high. That to me looks like a swing low. That's all. I would say that's one big swing moving up. These are little minor pullbacks that I don't care about. That's a swing high. That looks like a prominent swing low, right? Because that's the lowest point that breaks the high. Again, that looks like a pretty steep pullback. This one isn't, but this looks pretty significant to me, right? So that's my swing high and that's my swing low. And then what I went and did is I then measured them all right? And I go, okay, that's 76 pips. How big is this one? That's 103 pips. How big is this one? Right? That's about 70 pips. So then on average, when you look back, right, if you do about a year, well, enough data and you look back and you will suddenly see what your mind likes to see as significant structure. And you will go, okay, on this time frame, on this pair, I know that at a minimum, I want to see a 70 pip pullback, right, if it was based on this. And that's the rule I would come up with. Okay, and that's just kind of the way that I currently do it. There might be better ways to do it. There might be more mechanical ways. That's fine. Use whatever you want. But for me, this is how I do it. Okay, so I use my naked eye, for lack of a better phrase. I measured, I just drew it all out of swing structure. I then measured all of those swings, and that told me what the minimum pip size that I want to see. And now I just use that. So like I said, in a bullish market, the moment we get the candle closure above the break of structure line, right? I know that now we have continued the bullish swing trend and we're making a higher high, right? But I don't know where that higher high truly is, where the swing high is, until I see at least a 40 pip pullback on euro dollar on the 4-hour chart. Okay, and the way I got to that point was just doing a little bit of a test first, seeing what makes most sense to me, and then coming up with a minimum pip size rule, and now that works for me, okay? But obviously in a bullish market, the swing low will always be the lowest point, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Now, that's for a bullish market, so it's essentially the opposite in a bearish market, whereby let me draw it out, right? We have a nice clean movement down. We have a nice clean movement up. Okay, price pulls back. Potentially a lower highs forming. We never know, right? Now, at this point here, as soon as we get this break of structure here, right? Let me use lines so you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I want to make this so clear so you really, really understand it. Cool. So that's our break of structure, right? So this was our swing low. The moment we get that break of structure, let me do a slightly more complex example so I can really drive it home. So we have a clean movement down. Let's say we get a bit of a complex pullback, right? Price comes down like this. Now we get the break of structure. The moment we get that, right? You can set an alert, it goes off, it pings, it tells you we've had a break of structure. We can see the swing bearish trend is continuing, right? The moment that low breaks and we get a candle closure below the low, right? Where is our swing high? It's the highest point that broke this low after the low formed. Okay, so another simple way to think about it is after this low formed here, where my mouse is, anywhere within that box, if I draw it to where the break of structure happens, anywhere within that box, where's the highest point? This now becomes my new swing high. So can you see how mechanical that is? No matter what, right? You could plug that into an algorithm, okay? That's how mechanical that is. It would always be the highest point as soon as we get the candle closure. So now we know where our lower high is, right? There's no if, buts, or maybes about that, right? How do we know where our swing low is so we can map out the range? So I can map out, right? Because at the moment I can do this. I know this with a certainty. That is my current swing high, right? And I know the low is going to form at some point, but I can't say, right? If price was starting to move up a little bit here, I don't know that this is going to be my low, my swing low, because that just could be an internal low and we could keep doing this. We could keep trickling, right? And here we could get a bullish change of character. Okay, boom, we've had a bullish chalk. The internal structure has now switched bullish, right? That's a good signal that this probably is going to be the swing low and we probably are going to pull back, right? That is what change of character tells us. It's a good sign that potentially we're going to get that swing pullback. But I cannot mark out and tell with certainty that this is going to be the swing low, right? Until I get that 40 pip pullback on euro dollar on the 4 hour chart. Okay, because what can happen is it could be a little false signal and price could keep going. Then we get another bullish change of character here. And then let's say that this now is 40 pips. The moment that this movement moves 40 pips, boom, now I can mark out what? I can mark this out as my swing low, right? That is how basically I have personally made it mechanical. It's what works for me. There are other ways, and you can potentially make this more mechanical, but this is my method, okay? If you guys want to use it. So that now becomes my swing low. You can put a little circle on it. You can draw swing low, right? We always knew the swing high was up here, right? As soon as we had that break of structure there. Now this is the current swing range we're playing within, okay? So hopefully you can start to see how we are, well, one, this lesson is concentrating on how I mechanically define my swing highs and swing lows, right? You kind of have to look at slightly different things, whether it's bullish. So when it's bullish, we know straight away where the swing low is. It's the lowest point, but we wait for a 40 pip pullback before I know the swing high. And then obviously the opposite to that, when it's bearish, the moment we get a break of structure and the candle closes below, I look back for the highest point. That is my swing high no matter what, right? The highest point after the low formed. And then down here, I don't know where the swing low is. I can't map this out, put a nice little pretty circle there and draw my nice line across until I personally see at least a 40 pip movement. Okay, so that 40 pip rule is going to be different for every currency pair or whatever instrument you trade because they're all going to have different volatility amounts. So this is why you have to do a little test first to see what works for you. Okay, and then yeah, once we get the 40 pip movement, boom, I know. Okay, so for the 4 hour chart, I use 40 pips. For the M15, I currently use 15 pips. For the daily, I'm a little bit more loose, but my general rule is at least 90 pips, okay? So obviously we're only looking at one time frame at the moment, so let's keep it simple. And what I say to you guys is just follow what I use, okay? So when you're first starting out, I highly recommend you just look at euro dollar before you look at anything else. The 4 hour, it will be your main chart for now until we start to look at multi-time frame analysis. So the rule you just need to have in your heads is for a 4 hour pullback, right? In a bearish market, you need to say 40 pip pullback, right, before we can mark out the swing low. And in a bullish market, we need to say 40 pip bearish pullback to mark out where the swing high is, right? And that's how you build rules. So hopefully that makes sense. And then quickly, I kind of just want to do kind of one last example before we hop on the chart. So again, let's say we're in a bearish market, right? Price pulls back and now pulls back more than 40 pips. Okay, boom. So what I will do is I will mark out this as my swing low, right? Now, what am I waiting for? I'm waiting for price to break this, okay? So let's say my current swing high, let's just say it's, let's just use this, right? It's all the way up here. Price has now pulled back more than 40 pips. So this boss line is essentially also my swing low, but we'll just call it swing low for now, right? Put it to the right, right? So that's my swing high. Price is pull back 40 pips. So I've now marked out my swing low and the internal structure is bullish. It's making internal higher highs and higher lows. So what I then do, right, to do what? To signal that potentially the lower high may be forming. It's just a potential signal, is we wait for this internal structure to have a change of character, to switch bearish. Okay, boom, we get that change of character. So now it's a signal that potentially the lower high is forming, right? And now we can look to target the weak low. Okay, so let's say price comes down, it messes around, and this is what can happen. It can be a little bit more complex. You can get a bullish change of character, but price can still go. Okay, so now boom, we have had a break of structure where the swing low has now been taken, right? So this becomes our break of structure, right? So now with certainty, we can mark out that this becomes where? The highest point that broke this low after it formed, here, okay? It's not here, it's the highest point for our swing high. So now you can move this line down. This becomes our new swing high, okay? And you can mark that out straight away. Okay, now where's our swing low gonna be? I can't scroll price across because I'm too, anyway, you guys will know what I mean, but I can't zoom out. I'm gonna have to try and draw this in nice and tight. But essentially, as soon as we get the break of structure, right, I don't know where the swing low is until we pull back at least 40 pips on this time frame, but we can look for a little change of character to potentially signal. Okay, so you don't have to wait to, if you want to trade this pullback, right? You don't have to wait for a 40 pip movement first. You can wait for that change of character. Of course, we're going to pair this with the confluence, but it's just to understand that the change of character is just a signal we might be pulling back. But it's only when we pull back that 40 pips that now I can go mechanically, that is my swing low, and now I mark out the range I'm in. Okay, so I'm in this between the swing low and between the swing high. Okay, and then we follow the same process. Right, I don't want to bore you to death anymore with that, but I just want to make this super clear for all of you guys before you move it on. Okay, so I appreciate this is like watching paint dry, but when you really get this nailed into your subconscious, I promise you so much that everything will be easier. Okay, right, with that said, let's go look at some price action examples. Okay, so I'm not going to do a super long walkthrough just now, because there are videos that you're about to watch that do this in a lot of depth, but I do want to just kind of, like I keep saying, right, these videos right now that you're watching, this one and the previous one, are both being added since those videos have been recorded. So these two videos kind of represent the most simple and clearest way that I currently view the market and my current approach. So really follow this process. And then, yeah, you'll see how I apply it in the next videos. But these two videos right now that you're watching should be the clearest kind of way that I currently view and map structure. Okay, so for our chart, we are currently bullish. We have made a swing high and a swing low. Now, just to double check that this was a swing pullback, right? This movement here, and that it wasn't just a minor pullback, right? An internal pullback that I don't care about. What I do is I mark out, right? You can measure it, the high. So the way I'm doing this is I'm holding shift and clicking, and then it will bring you can measure it in pips, okay? And that will give me, that says it was 51 pips, okay? So remember, I want to see at least a 40 pip pullback. So that tells me, okay, this is a mechanical way of defining that, yes, this was a swing pullback. Right, so let me mark out, I'm just going to do this so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, right? We pull back. Now, when we got this here, this break of 4 hour structure, right? As soon as the candle, see right now the candle has closed above it, where is my current swing low? Well, it's the lowest point that took this high out after it formed. So again, if this will help you, right? Because sometimes it's easy in this case, but sometimes it's a bit more complex. What you can do is you can draw a box from where the high is, right? And then draw it across to where price broke structure, and then just drag it down as far as you need to go, right? And somewhere within that gray box, wherever the lowest point is, that is now your swing low. Okay, that's the easiest way I can help you guys out with that. Okay, so this point here becomes our new swing low, right? Boom, that's our swing low. Okay, so you can see how there's no if, buts, or maybes about it. That is our swing low no matter what. And we have now gone on to make a higher high, but I cannot mark out with confidence where my actual swing high is until we get what? Until we get a 40 pip pullback. So I can mark this out as my swing low, all right? Put it to the bottom, put it to the right. Okay, a little bit bigger so you can see it. That's my current swing low. We've now made a higher high, but all I'm doing now is waiting for a 40 pip pullback, right? We haven't even had a change of character because what? All of these candles broke the prior candle's high. It's all part of the up move, right? Nothing's happened yet. Let me measure this pullback. Let me see just quickly. Let's see. This is what we'll be doing, right? We've only pulled back 23 pips. That's not significant for me for the 4 hour chart. Okay, now we've taken out this high. So, but that wasn't a 40 pip pullback. So that to me is not a swing pullback. That is just an internal pullback. Okay, so what that means is if you're also looking at change of character, where is your most recent internal low that you would need to see be broken with a wick, at least a wick, for there to be a bearish change of character? It would be this low here, okay? Because this is the nearest low, right? Obviously, it's a significant low because it took out the high, right? And we look back, all of these candles broke the prior candle's high. That's all part of the up move. So this is our most recent internal low. Okay, so hopefully it's now making sense of how we map this. So this is my swing low. We've gone on to make a higher high, but we have not yet had a 40 pip pullback. So there is no significant swing pullback just yet. Okay, but we have had a minor pullback. We've had an internal pullback, right? So now if price was to come down, right, like this, and wick that low, that for me would be a bearish 4 hour change of character. And what that would signal to me is that potentially we're going to have a 4 hour pullback. And then what I would wait for is for that 4 hour internal lower high to be broken to the upside. So we would then get a bullish change of character, right? Remember the swing trend is bullish the whole time. That would now signal to me that potentially the 4 hour higher low is in place. And now we can look to get long to target that week high. Okay, so this is how I would have it mapped out. right? And this is what you can do in a live market. Wherever current price action is, always have your swing low marked out, right? Use a horizontal line like this. This can really help when you're starting out. And you could probably always leave, if you wanted, like a dashed line where your nearest internal low is, right, when you're bullish. And then you know exactly where you are. You know what range you're playing within. This is your swing low. You know that this is your nearest internal low, right? So right now the swing trend is bullish and the internal structure is bullish. So let's keep going. Okay, that candle breaks the prior candle's high. So does that one. So does that one. Okay, now we've had a bit of a pullback, right? Minor pullback, but there's nothing to do yet, okay? Because this is still our recent internal low and we have clearly not had a 40 pip pullback, right? Okay, boom. So now what happened in that one candle, we pulled back, right? And then we took the high. So now my most recent internal low becomes this one because this is the nearest low that took that high out, that internal high. Now, again, just double check that wasn't a 40 pip pullback. Clearly wasn't, right? That was 18 pips, okay? So swing low is still down here and we still don't know where the swing high is, okay? And the internal structure has stayed bullish the entire time. So let's keep going, okay? Inside bar, so it's getting a little bit messy. Now we have a weight to that low, okay? So now we have had a bearish change of character. So that's the first time, right, this entire time that the internal structure has now shifted bearish and potentially signaled that we may now be having at least a 4-hour pullback, at least, right? Or it could turn into a reversal, right? We never know, but the trend is still bullish. Right, now let's also measure from the high down to the low. Have we had 40 pip movement yet? Okay, almost pretty much there, right? So if you want to be super mechanical, whoops, I didn't mark out properly. There we go. Let's see. Okay, that's a 43.7 pip movement. So let's try and be 100% mechanical, right? That for me now means we have had a swing pullback because it's more than 40 pips on the 4-hour chart on euro dollar. Okay, so I know this is really pedantic, but trust me, you will need this. So now I can draw my pretty little circle on my high to tell me that that is now a swing high, right? We have also now had a bearish change of character, okay? But we're still bullish because this is the swing low. So now that I've put my pretty little circle on because we've had a 40 pip pullback, what I can do, right, just to help you, this is really useful if you want to do this in a live market and when you're practicing, this now becomes your 4-hour swing high, right? Boom, okay, now we can potentially anticipate a pullback and let's see what happens. Now, you'll probably recognize this price action because we looked at this when we looked at the previous video in the internal structure. Now, one point I kind of want to drive home is now we've had that bearish change of character, right? And we can have that pullback. You need to remember that change of character is extremely, extremely aggressive, right? It's just that first little sign of internal structure shifting. So at the moment, right, when we get that bearish change of character here and price continues to move down, right, all those candles break the prior candles low and they pull back. Remember that for there to be a bullish change of character, what would we need to see? We would need to see the nearest high go. It would be this inside bar. Remember, I always take the nearest inside bar if there is one. Okay, so the internal structure has switched bearish. It's had a little bit of a pullback, but it's still bearish. But the point I want to drive home here is that let's say that price did have a bullish change of character there. That can signal now that the high low is in place and we could be ready to go for the high again. It is a good signal, but I just want you to be aware, and I really want to make this point clear now, is that it doesn't necessarily mean that we get that, that we're just going to go. We can price can be quite complex and you can have these complex pullbacks. So this is why I only pay attention to change of character as you go through the course when we come into decent levels of value. So imagine there's a nice supply zone here. All I'm waiting for is that bearish shift in structure to signify this level, and I'll be looking for price to come down, okay? So we could, potentially switch bullish here, but it still doesn't mean that we can't come down. So this is why, it just becomes a little bit of a confluence on its own. But yeah, I don't want to confuse you guys too much at this stage, okay? So let's see what happens with the internal structure. We stay bearish, right? We continue. So this is the point, right? I'm not going to label all of this. I only concentrate or only draw on structure when it shifts. But if we stay bearish with the internal structure, I'm not going to draw anything on. Okay, because you want to keep your charts nice and clear. And also I don't care about every single little break of structure, right? So now what happens, we've stayed bearish in internal structure. Now, if the 4-hour chart is going to stay bullish, what do we expect? We expect this strong low to hold, this swing low, because it took out the high, right? So that would be the expectation, right? So we can look to get long here, right? There's a demand zone here. I won't draw it on because you don't need to worry about it right now. But this is where I would be looking for a higher low to form. So what can we wait for? We can wait for a bullish change of character, right? Now, for some of you, it might be easier if you just always have your nearest change of character line on, just because it helps you to know what you're waiting for. So this would be it, okay? Because this is the nearest at the moment. This is the nearest internal high in the bearish internal structure because we had a movement down. All those candles broke the prior candles low. Then they failed to do so, right? So this is part of the pullback. And then all of these candles, right? You see how they all broke the prior candles low? And then we've pulled back, right? So this is the current internal structure range we're playing within. So if you were waiting for a bullish change of character to confirm that this level is going to hold, you just want a little bit more confirmation. Right now, you'd be sitting on your hands and you'd be waiting for this dotted line to break, okay? So if price was to do that, that will potentially confirm that the 4-hour high low is in place potentially, and the swing trend is going to continue, and then we can look to target that high, right? It's just a little signal. You don't have to wait for that, but that's just basically the way that we use the concept. Okay, so price is just ranging. Do we break that high? Don't believe we do. Yeah, we trade as high as it, but the price, remember, it needs to break it. Even if it's 1 micro pip, pipette, whatever you call it, it has to break it by 1 micro pip. So what you can do, right, if you're not sure, is if you put your mouse on the candle, so here, and then bring your eyes up to here, this top bit here, right? Use this to your advantage where it tells you the high, the low, the close of the candle. So again, put your mouse on the candle, look up there. What does it say? The high, it says, is 1.18513, okay? 51.3, that's the high. If we go to here, what is the high of this candle? 51.2, okay? So that is a micro pip short of breaking it, right? So it never breached the high. Now, if these were exactly the same, right, they were both 51.3, again, it's still not a break of the high, right? It needs to break it by at least 1 micro pip. Okay, so it never trades higher at this point. We keep going. And now we have not broken the 4-hour low, so we're still bullish on the 4-hour chart, but the bearish internal structure is still bearish because we never took out that high. But now we've taken out this low, this bearish internal low. Where is our nearest internal high, right? You can take this one if you want, right? If you just adjust it across. But I like to be a bit more aggressive, and I always hit the nearest inside bar. Me personally, I like to be more aggressive with it, okay? But you might want to use the kind of more obvious high if you want to, but this is the way I do it, okay? So now at this point, I would need to see this high go for the bearish internal structure to switch bullish to give us that internal change of character, that bullish chalk, to confirm potentially that the high low is going to form here and stay intact. Okay, boom, next candle. And remember, it's key. You have to wait for the candle closure, wait for it to close, because what can happen is price can wick down aggressively, right? And then it can wick back up and it can close back above. And that means the trend stayed bullish. You have to wait for that candle closure on the swing trend. If you do it the same way as me, right? You don't have to do it, but if you want to do it the same way as me, this is the way I do it. Okay, boom, now we have a candle closure. So what that means is this now here, I'm going to change this to a break of structure. Put it in the center so we know exactly what we're looking at. Right, and I really recommend when you're starting out, you do this with all your labels and your words in it, because it will just help you to keep track of where you're at, okay? So now we've had a bearish break of structure on the 4-hour chart. For me now, the 4-hour trend is confirmed bearish, okay? So remember what I said, the moment we get that candle closure below a swing low or a high, right, a swing break of structure, the very minute that this candle closes, straight away, I can now mechanically, 100% certainty, define where my swing high is. Okay, where is my swing high? It is the highest point after the low formed that was broken. So after this low formed, where is the highest point that broke it? So use the box rule if it helps. Draw your box from where the low was, right, to where it was broken, and then just drag it upwards. Okay, so from where the low formed to where it was broken, and then drag it upwards. The highest point in this gray box becomes your swing high. So in this instance, when we had the trend change, excuse me, in this instance, the swing high stays in the same place because that was the highest point, right? That went on to break the low after it formed. But sometimes what can happen, right, and it is a little bit more complex, sometimes it can be confusing, is when this price action happened, is price could have moved up, it could have spiked that high when we were still bullish and closed back below. So that means we would have had a break of structure, right? If we didn't close above the high, we just spiked it, we come back down, and then this happens, right? So imagine this is just a big wick, it's just a big, right? It was never a true break of structure, and then we come down and close, and now we're bearish. Where would the swing high would be? In that instance, right, you would have to adjust it, and this would be the new swing high. Okay, I'll put an example below in the notes below the video just to explain that. Okay, so hopefully you can see now the moment we get that candle closure below the low, straight away you can now define where your swing high is. In this case, it stays the same. Simple. Okay, so now we have a 4-hour break of structure. What do we expect? We expect a pullback on that time frame, so we expect a 4-hour pullback. Now, it doesn't have to happen straight away. Price could literally tank for ages, but we just have to have in the back of the minds that potentially a 4-hour pullback is going to kick in. Okay, so what can we use to help us potentially signal that the pullback starting? Well, we wait for a bullish change of character. We wait for that internal structure to switch bullish. So let's play price forward. See how all of these candles break the prior candles low? It's all part of the down move, right? All the way from here. That's all bearish, right? So that is our most recent internal high that we would need to see go for there to be a bullish change of character. But remember, for a swing, to know where the swing low is, what do I need to wait for? I want to wait for a 40 pip pullback on the 4-hour chart on Eurodollar. So just make sure, right? How big is that? Let's see. Okay, that's over 40 pips. So this is an instance where we have not had a bullish change of character, but we have had a 40 pip pullback. So I can now mark with 100% mechanical certainty, because of the rule that I have put in place in my plan, that the moment we get that 40 pip pullback in a bearish market, right, when we get that 40 pip bullish pullback, I can draw my pretty little circle, and I now know that this is my swing low. So use one of your lines, right, and map it out. So now what you can do, and this is just really, really useful, right, is go, okay, now we're playing within this swing range here, right? So now, as long as price does not come up and close above this high, right, it can do anything it wants, right? In terms of, it can come up here, it can break the internal lower high to make an internal higher high. So that would be a bullish change of character, right? It can do that up here, that's fine. But the swing trend is bearish, right? It can come all the way up here. As long as it doesn't close above the high, right? It could spike it like that if it wants or whatever. As long as it doesn't close above the high and then come down, the swing trend has been bearish the entire time, okay? So let's go through this a little bit more quickly now, and you can just see a bit more of an example, and then we'll leave it there, okay? So let's see what happens. Nothing's happening. We're just ranging. Okay, boom. Now we have a candle closure, okay? So what will happen then is I'll just move this swing low line out of the way, and we'll use that in a second. So I'll delete this one. We'll put this as a break of structure. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this quickly, but hopefully you guys can follow now after me going really, really slowly. Okay, so now we've had a break of structure. As soon as we get the candle closure, what we can do is we can mark out with mechanical certainty where our swing high is. Our swing high is the highest point that broke this low after the low was formed. So that becomes here. So now I can put my pretty little circle on my swing high, right? This becomes the highest point that broke the low. So now we can move this line down, right? This becomes the swing high. Now, where do I move the truck line to? Where is the most recent internal lower high that I would need to see broken for there to be a bullish chalk? It's this high here, okay? Because if you look back, that's the last candle, right? This is the high. You can see the movement there, right? Price comes down, it moves up, it comes down, it moves up, and then all of these candles break the prior candles low. So that would be the high that I would need to see go for the internal structure to switch bullish. So that becomes my chalk line, right? Okay, change of character. So we're bearish, that's my change of character, that's my swing high. We know those with a mechanical certainty. There's no if or buts about it. That is it, it's black and white. But we don't yet know where the swing low is until what? Until we get a 40 pip pullback. So we've had a break of structure. What do we expect after a break of structure? We expect a pullback on this time frame. How can we anticipate when that pullback is going to start? We can look for a bullish change of character. And that would be the line that I would need to see go, right, before I would know that. Okay, so let's have a look. Is this 40 pips yet? Not quite yet. That might be 40 pips. Not quite yet. Okay, boom. Let me just double check that. Okay, 38.4 pips. I'm going to be as mechanical as a robot. That for me is not swing structure. But we have now taken out the internal low to form a lower low. So now we move this line down because this becomes our nearest internal lower high that I would need to see go, right, to get that bullish chalk. Okay, but we have not had a swing low yet because we have not had a 40 pip pullback, right? Let's keep going. All those candles break the prior candles low. It's all part of the down move. Okay, we pull back a little bit. Let's measure this. Okay, not quite 40 pips. Okay, that's probably about 40 pips now. Okay, boom, right? Let's call that, 40 pips, okay? So get your pretty little circle out. Now you can mark your swing low. Now you can draw your line there, right? Now here, we have to be careful, but all of these candles, you can double check it if you put your candle on there and read all this, but all of these candles break the prior candles low. So still, we have not had a bullish change of character. Now that doesn't mean that the 4 hour can't have a decent pullback. It's just telling you that the change of character is not confirmed until that high goes. Okay, boom. Now we have a candle closure below here. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. So this will be the last example, just so you guys get it. That's the break of structure. We have a candle closure below. So mechanically, where is our new swing high? It's the highest point that broke this low after it was formed. So if you're confused, use the box. Draw it from the swing low over to where it was broken. Drag the tool up. Okay, where is the highest point? You see how it's not here? It's this point here. So this point becomes our swing high. So now you can get your pretty little circle. All right, the highlighter pen tool was the word I was trying to get out there. That's our new swing high, okay? So now we can bring this, and we now know we're playing within this much smaller range, okay? Because this becomes our new swing high. All right, so if price was to break up and close above that high, then the 4 hour chart becomes bullish, okay? Now, where is our change of character line? Where is the nearest internal high? And this is an example where it's in the exact same place as the internal swing high. Okay, so sometimes they will overlap, they will be the same thing. So right now, if price was to come up, and if it was to break this level, Okay, if it wick broke it, if it wick breaked it, whatever the English phrase is, if price came up here and just wicked it, that would be enough for me to see there's a bullish chalk. But I would need to see a candle closure to say there's a true break of structure and to say that the swing trend has switched bullish. Okay, so it's pretty much in the same place. I appreciate. Well, we'll just leave that there. Okay, so that's 27 pips. It's not a swing pullback yet. That probably is a swing pullback. Okay. So now we can cement, okay, this is my swing low, put your pretty circle on, so on and so forth, right? And that's essentially how I do it. Whenever, price is doing it in a live market, you can see how it doesn't breach the high and then we can continue down, so on and so forth. And you can keep following that process. So that's how I do it. That's how I speak to myself every single day. I just really wanted to put this video out here to go through it almost painfully slowly and tell you, well, based on the last video and based on this video, you should, as far as I'm personally aware, maybe you guys will point out any holes in my method, but as far as I'm aware, that is now 100% mechanical, right? The internal structure, there's no if buts, maybes about it, right? You can plug that into an algorithm. Now with the swing structure, it's discretionary when you first start out, because what you will need to do is you will need to take the 4-hour chart, right? Zoom out, do like a year or two's worth of price action, and just with a naked eye, right? Don't worry about doing all your changes of character and stuff, right? The internal structure. Just focus on the swing structure, okay? Use the circle tool, whatever is quickest. I would recommend drawing the boss line as well, so you don't get confused, right? Take your time and just look at what to you, with your naked eye, looks like a significant pullback. Because some of you might think, well, no, actually, just I'll circle it, you know what I'm talking about. You go, actually, no, for me, that is a swing pullback. I see that as swing structure. But what you need to then do is measure that and go, okay, it's not quite 40 pips. So maybe your rule needs to be 35 or 30, so on and so forth. Some of you may think, well, that's not that big of a pullback. You may want to focus on bigger swings in price action, right? You want to see something really prominent. So your rule might be 60 pips or 80 pips, so on and so forth. The key here, and I do a big rant on this later in the lessons that you're gonna listen to, and I'm sure you'll enjoy, is the key with trading is to be consistent. Okay, bring your method to the madness. So that's why when I tested it and I've got my 40 pip rule in there, now I just try to stick to that. It's just mechanical, and that's it. And that's how, hopefully you're learning here the ways in which you can make your strategy as mechanical as possible, just to remove any, if any, what's the word I'm looking for? Any doubts, do you know what I mean? If you're not sure. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Drop a comment below if you have any questions or anything. But yeah, start now with just euro dollar. You'll see as we do another full chart walkthrough, just focusing on the 4-hour chart. For me, I will put this below the video, but for me at the moment, I currently like to see at least 40 pips on the 4-hour chart, at least 15 pips on the M15. But again, don't worry about other timeframes too much just yet. We'll get into this. And the daily chart, generally more than 90 pips. But as you'll see, I'm a little bit more loose with the daily chart. I like to use a little bit of discretion there. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. But the two main timeframes I personally use are the 4-hour and the M15 for structure. Right? They are my two main go-to timeframes. I have them on my charts all the time. So for 4-hour, keep it mechanical. I want to see at least 40 pips. For M15, I want to see at least 15 pips. Follow this process. And as far as I'm aware, this then becomes 100% mechanical. Okay? But just do that test first with your swing structure to find out what pip rule makes sense to you. Now, the final caveat I would leave with you is that if you're using something like I am, which is a pip rule, volatility can change on a currency pair over time. Okay, so if you potentially backtest the 4-hour chart 8 years ago, volatility might be higher or might be lower than it is currently. Okay, so 40 pips back then might not make as much sense as it does, in the nearest 2 years. Okay, so that's why this isn't necessarily something I would build into, an EA or an algorithm. But as you're continuously, obviously trading every day, you're going to notice if volatility changes, and then you can adjust your rules. But I know right now, with all of the recent data that I have in the last year to 2 years, 40 pips for me works pretty perfectly. Okay, so I just stick to that. It's not going to change that much, okay, over time. It takes a long time for you to kind of gradually notice that, so don't worry too much. But yeah, I'll leave that there before I kind of go on any other tangents and confuse you any more than you need to be. Please, if there's 2 videos, right, that you need to master, it's this one and the one before it on internal structure. Just watch it again and again and again and again until you have this mechanical method, right, just absolutely printed into your mind, until you're having nightmares about it every single night, and talk to yourself out loud like the way I have, right? When we get a break of structure, wait for the candle closure to confirm it. The candle closure confirms we've had a break of structure and we've continued the bearish trend. After we have a break of structure, where is our new swing high? It's the highest point that broke this low after the low form. So you can draw your box, mark it out. Okay, we do not know where the swing low is until we have at least a 40 pip pullback on the 4-hour chart on euro dollar. Also, whereas, and then do the change of character stuff, okay? I won't go any more about it, right? I'll leave that there. Hopefully enjoy it. Now, in the next few videos, we are going to do a bit more of a chart walkthrough, and it's a bit of a faster pace, and it's not with bar replay. And again, if you hear me kind of talk about minor structure and substructure, don't worry too much. Basically, anything that isn't swing structure, from now on, just refer to it as internal structure, okay? And that is as simple as your trading needs to be effective, in my humble opinion. Right, this would be a swing pullback, okay? And then we break the swing high, right? So that would be the break of structure to form a higher high. So let me draw this on super quickly. Okay, so let's say that is our M15 break of structure. So now we form a higher high. Where was the lowest point that took out that high? It's this low down here, okay? So this becomes my swing low, and I need to see that low go for there to be a trend change, okay? Which obviously we eventually get. But if we zoom in this price action here, all of this, right, is all part of the up move, and then this is the swing high, and then we start to pull back, okay? But you see within that run, there's a little pullback. So we come up, and then we pull back, right? And then we come up. So when price comes down and wicks that low here, that for me is exactly what I call a change of character, right? Because it takes out that internal low. Why is it an internal low? Because it's between the swing high and the swing low, right? So when we come down and we take that, that is a change of character, and now you can see how we can then look for that move to the downside, right? And then we break structure down here. But then what happens? You see how we come down, we have a very, very small pullback, and then we pull down. What does that mean? Well, that means that we have a high here, right? Because this high here took the low. So again, just want to make this very, very clear. Price comes down. We break the swing low to form a lower low, right? Then we pull back up, because you see how this candle here, it fails to take out this candle's low. If I zoom right in. So we move down, and then we pull back up because this candle fails to break the candle's low, right? So it's a pullback. Then we break the low, which means that this is now our most recent, aggressive high, internal high, whatever you want to call it. So now when price wicks that, now we have a bullish change of character, right? And that now signals that we're going to probably get that pullback, okay? And that's how we use it. So one other little tip I can give you, because I know some people get this confused when they're looking at it kind of for the first time, is that the color of the candle is irrelevant for whether price pulled back or not, okay? So how you want to basically look at these small pullbacks is you see on this move here, all of these candles broke the prior candle's high, so that it's all part of the up move. Now this bearish candle here, it fails to take out this candle's high, so that is part of that small pullback, okay? And then all of these candles break the prior candle's high, so that's all part of the up move. Likewise here, all of these candles break the prior candle's low. You see how each wicks the prior candle's low, so it's all part of the down move. This candle is the one that fails to break this candle's low, right? So now we get the pullback. And then we take the low. So at that point, I would need to see this high go for there to be a change of character, but there isn't. Then we pull back, then we come down. So now we have that new internal high that it would need to see go for there to be a bullish change of character. Then we take it. Now we have a bullish change of character, and now we come in, okay? And then boom, we're off. Then we pull back, then we come up, and then we change character again, right? We have that bearish change of character. We come down, right? And then so on. So you can see how there's changes of characters in a lot of random areas, and that's why we just try to use them at turning points, okay? Like these areas here, after a break of structure, we look for a change of character to tell us when there's going to be a pullback, and then boom, we can get in long, so on and so forth. So hopefully I've made that clear. It really doesn't need to be complicated. Please refer to all swing breaks of structure like this, these solid lines, as bosses, whether it's a trend change or not. Just call them all bosses. And then these small internal aggressive highs and lows, right, we'll call those when they get taken changes of character. Okay, the first time, right, this is higher high, higher low, higher high, but then we take out that small low to form a lower low. That's our bearish change of character. But then we stay bearish the entire time. Okay, we pull back up, we come down, we pull back up. All of these candles break the prior candle's low, then we pull back. All of these candles break the prior candle's low, then we pull back, then we come down, and then eventually we form that internal higher high, right? And then we start to pull back. But the swing structure is this, right? When we get the swing low taken out, that is our swing lower low, and this becomes our new swing high, and then we pull back, okay? Right, and then this is where, right, we'd be looking for price coming into our level. What do we wait for? We can wait for a bearish change of character. You see here, we have higher high, higher low, higher high. We then take out that low to have our bearish change of character. That then confirms our level, and then we can wait for price to come back in, right? And then we're going to short and so on and so forth. This is what you'll learn in a bit. But yeah, I'm hoping I've made that nice and clear, and you guys get that. But yeah, just really pay attention to essentially when those candles fail to break the candle's prior high, then we know we pull back. And then here, when this candle fails to break the prior candle's low, that is the pullback, okay? So then you know where your most recent high is that you need to see get wicked for there to be a bullish or bearish change of character. And then the final tip is we only use it really in key areas just to give us that final little bit of confirmation that we need to see for those turning points. So hopefully that's clear. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message on Discord.